I'm teaching a memoir writing class that starts March 5th. There's my commercial. You can take it. I teach it at the Senior Citizen Center so people can get there, because half of them are always on walkers and from the community. Okay, so they said out there that I was reading a college poetry, which surprised the heck out of me, because I had to think, what do I have that would be college poetry? And I usually start out just by talking about how I got an idea, how as a writer, when I was in college, I wrote mainly for myself. I didn't want anybody to know what I was writing about anyway, you know. But then I got to a point where I wanted to communicate with other people a little bit and see if they could get what I was talking about. And then I moved here, started teaching, married, got pregnant, and the boom hit Rock Springs all at once. So we up at the college kind of formed our own family, because most of us were here. You know, the first thing you ask people when you meet them is, where are you from? Huh? You know, and this happened. And the boom hit, and everybody was ticked off. The people who had lived here 2 or 3 generations, their town was blown apart, you know? And I'm here with people, everybody's kind of cranky, and where I grew up, I had not only cousins, but double cousins, and everybody was related to me, and I couldn't really get into trouble very much without my parents learning about it, and so on. But here I am. I have married, have stepkids, am pregnant with twins, so I'm shock-proof, and nobody, and I'm kind of isolated from family. And I started remembering stories that my grandmother used to tell, just to keep us entertained, I think, about homesteading up in Saskatchewan, Canada, and being all alone out there, where when you stand up, you're the tallest thing in the whole horizon, and that sort of thing. So I started then to see comparisons and parallels with the people who are living in campers in the Pomida parking lot and being uprooted from their lives and ending up here. And a lot of people ended up here and found their place. Unexpectedly found that this is where they belonged, kind of. But anyway, I'll read a couple of those early poems, because they may not be college per se, but their place, this place. And this one's called Rock Springs from the Inside. Immigrants from the hot mines in Germany, Greece, the Baltics, came here to this sun-filled, desert-wide place years ago to work the mines, bringing their trades, forming the narrow, winding streets, just like back home, where there wasn't much room, even though the high plains have nothing but space. Old Town is cramped, wall-to-wall, narrow, vertical, steep. When they could swing it, the miners walked out and dug their own coal. Freelancers jerry-rigged in the sides of hills around the fringes. Secret mines, one man's dream apart from the company paying in script. So now, in the new subdivision, up on the hill for the view, something shudders, shifts, as somewhere deep in that secret spot, the hill remembers. Now, where did I get that? Once there was an administrator at the college here who used to have ideas, and he had an idea. Well, I'm sure there are some now too, but he had the idea that we should be teaching some things at the senior center. So he signed me up to teach a writing class down at the senior center. And then the senior center rounded up a bunch of people, and they didn't quite know what they were doing, and I didn't quite know what I was doing, and we got together and we had some fun telling stories. I got them telling stories about Rock Springs, and some of these stories about the company town, the company houses, and so on, I took back in my memory, and they somehow come out sometimes, you know. And then there was a newspaper article a few years ago about a lady who opened up her front door to get the paper. That was when the paper was delivered, of course. And her front stoop had fallen a bunch of feet because the mine that was underneath, they had this subsidence and it just went plop. And of course, then we had all that mine subsidence foo-for-rah around town where you didn't know if your house was going to fall in or not, you know. Anyway, I don't think so. But that's one of them. And let me see. I think I'll do another Saturday night just for the fun of it. Because this is kind of another story that I got from a little old lady in one of my classes. Now I'm the little old lady. I shouldn't be using that phrase anymore, but there I am. I don't think of myself that way. But it's called Another Saturday Night. Back then, during the first boom, it was a company town, full of company houses, all alike, row after row, coming down from the mine, number 1 or number 3. Everyone appreciated the company. It was better than tents. The men would come home, tramping down their rows to their houses every night, to eat, to sit in the chair and read the paper until dark, except on paydays, when they would stop for a drink and come roaring home, full of whiskey, ready to do their duty another Saturday night, and couldn't find their houses. They all looked alike. On one row, the women got together and painted her front door a different color so her man could get home Saturday nights with some of the pay. They named it Rainbow Avenue. A lovely thought in a dusty world. The town grew and things changed, but not much. City fathers changed the name of Rainbow Avenue to 9th Street to conform to the times, the plans. Now, there's a new boom with major renovations and additions. Strip lines have replaced the deep black holes like number 3. They call themselves after pioneers, places with a mystique. Jim Bridger, Black Butte, lovely names. 9th Street extends up the hill into a trailer court. Row after row of 70 and double wides bought by the company flash in waves of aluminum in the sun, hundreds of ripples in the light stream. They are better than tents. The men turn their 4-wheel drives into their rows every night, to eat, to watch TV until dark, except, of course, payday. The women on 9th Street may have to have a meeting, take back their names, give the numbers to the mines, and paint the town doors for another Saturday night. Huh? Now, I have a story about this poem. I read it one time, and this lady came up to me who was sort of a local historian. She was on the museum board and so on, and very serious. And she said, and she had some papers too with her, and she said, I want to talk to you about that poem about Rainbow Avenue. And I go, yeah. She says, there was no such thing as Rainbow Avenue. I go, really? She says, I have looked at all the maps and the plats, and it wasn't there. And then she said, you're going to have to change that poem. And she was not kidding either, you know. And I said, well, there's a reason why poetry is kind of set in there with fiction in the library, you know. I said this was a shaped poem like everything is shaped, you know. And I have told this story a number of times. And last fall I was down in Laramie, and the former director of the museum in Green River, Bree, some of you may know her, she emailed me later. She says, just a minute. She found a map where Rainbow Avenue was over there by the Catholic Church where the fort used to be. You know, where that fort after the Chinese massacre, they had that fort. I don't know what they called it, but anyway. And there was a little street, little tiny street, and it's down there by Bunning Park, kind of in that area, Rainbow Avenue. And it connects up with 9th Street. So I'm vindicated, you know. Anyway, okay. I have a couple of poems that might connect to the college. And when I think about the kinds of things I write about place quite a bit. And I write about the connections between then and now. Sometimes I see those connections. And somebody asked me from the Arts Council a week ago to consider something they call the spark. What is it about a piece of writing that turns it from just this description into a poem? What is that? And it doesn't always happen, you know. In fact, most of the time it doesn't happen, you know. But once in a while, you get something, usually something that surprises you as you're writing. And you have what I think of as a connection, you know. All right, so I have a couple, 69, let me find it. I have a couple that generated up here at the college some years ago maybe. This one is called Shadow Dancer. Oh, and one of my bosses one time had me come and read in his class, and he came up later and he says, well, you certainly have a lot of dancing in your family. And I go, well, I don't know. It's just that the concept of dancing seemed to be kind of a positive thing, you know? And so a lot of times that image finds its way into something or other. He says, well, you always had your mother dancing. And I'm going, yeah, I think I probably did. But this one's different. And it was written quite some years ago, but it's called Shadow Dancer. She stands at the railing to watch the others dancing. A 12-year-old let into the Halloween dance. Unable to hide a shy smile, grinning wildly behind her eyes, her heart beats to the lights. Throbbing with the music the DJ plays, I want to feel your body. A college boy who doesn't know her, doesn't know she's 12, asks her to dance. Yes. Carefully, she walks out to dance with him, looking about to be sure this is really her. Oh, Mom, her eyes say. Correct in her moves, she dances, her body ever moving, changing, aware of the changes coming. The costume of her childhood preserved and put away. I see her shadow dancing in the pulsing light, the shadow of a woman, certain in her moves, splendid in her dance. A tall shadow we recognize. There it is in the shadow, the gathering of a secret she does not quite know yet. a melody, the strain of a song she cannot quite hear yet. But there, in the confusion of the music, the lights, the dance, her song coming on. Okay, that's it. That's the other and I have another college one. Let's see where I am on time. Okay. 55. I had a young woman here who came here from France and I was on the advisor to the school newspaper when they had a paper, and she was a photographer on there, and she just got the biggest kick out of Americans, and she was always commenting on things, about you Americans, okay. And that's the French anyway, okay. I went to France and tried to speak French. My college French did not pass muster, and they just said, "Oh, you're so terrible. Speak English." Okay. Smiles, it's called. "You Americans," the French girl said, "you are always smiling. Too much smiling. Like the dog who rolls on his back, subservient." We smile at her, and she shakes her head. "You can't help it, always smiling." Out west, on a gravel road, two pickups meet. The drivers raise two fingers from the wheel or tip their hats. "Hello." That's a smile. With our mask on these days, we may miss the smiles. We greet one another now with a nod from afar. But as we tip our heads, our eyes say, "We see you. We are still here, smiling." So that was written during the pandemic, too, by the way. Most of these, well, some of them are written fairly recently because my editor kept saying you need to have a few more poems here and there and so on. But most of them are written over a period of 40, 50 years. I'm that old. I know I don't look it. But, yeah, okay. Let's see. We got... I have another one from the college that took me a while to read, but it was I was a division chair, and one of our people, Roger Taylor, passed away, and he was an English teacher, and he passed away during the school year, and it was left up to me to deal with the thing. So I wrote this later, much later. And I think it also speaks to, and maybe answers that question about when does it turn into something, into a poem, instead of just a newspaper report or some such thing. And I'll talk about that in a minute. It's called Flotsam. He died sooner than expected. For months, his office door remained closed. The dean asked, "Who will go through his things?" Not his wife. No, she could not. "Pack one box," she said, "donate the rest." Not his friend, who cried at the mention of his name. Not the one waiting to take his place. Not the custodian with a black plastic bag. And so it fell to me to take the keys, unlock the door, open the shade. Dust motes spiral in a sunbeam shining on his desk, piled with papers as if he just stepped out for a moment. Files spill out of drawers, stacks of books fill the corners. Reading glasses, set down, reflect the light. A rock from Walden Pond anchors his well-thumbed text. Like Beowulf's armor awaiting the trumpet's call, his cap and gown hang ready for another commencement. A Star Trek cutout of data lurks behind the door. The room is full of the flotsam of a career. Flotsam, Roger would have known the derivation. Quote, any wreckage or cargo that remains after a ship has sunk. Norman French for flotter, to float. He fashioned his life to suit himself. Teaching Dante in the morning, English-style horseback riding in the afternoon, astronomy after dark, and the next day introducing Flannery O'Connor to sleepy freshmen with joy and passion. Between classes, he chatted online with skeptical inquirers. Does heaven exist? What comes after this? He left too suddenly to give us his password. Emails go unanswered. Someone has left daffodils tied with a ribbon on his chair, hoping for another burst of glory, another spring. He ordered them, unaware cancer left no time to do more than close the door. Never tasting the sharp cut that makes them bloom, never drinking in fresh water or the light from his window, the dried up daffodils lie there unopened. Yeah. Now, what unexpectedly came to me as I'm writing along the line was the daffodils that finished, that surprised, and I think made the spark because it represented whatever, you know. Otherwise, it's just a list of stuff, I think. Huh? Any comments? Yeah. All right, now let's see what else I have. I've got 5 more minutes here. I'm going to go next week as poet laureate. I asked them, well, what do I have to do? You know, and do you pay me? They says, well, not too much and no. It's an honorary position and you can do what you like. But they would like me to go to the Governor's Arts Award banquet and read, and they want me to go to the legislature. I read a couple of poems, and I'm thinking about these politicians and how excited they're going to be for me to read a couple of poems. So I'm considering what to read, and I think I'm going to focus a little bit on a couple of poems I have about Wyoming, about place, and people have. They have talked about Wyoming as the big empty. Somebody once said, well, it's a big square place. We ought to just put a fence around it and put all our criminals in there because there's nothing else out there. Stuff like that. So in response, I have a few things to say about that. Because here's what happens. Many people, or some people come here. They come for the boom, they come for the job, and they leave as soon as they can, you know? But there's other people that find their place, that this is their place. And it happens. It happens to people. Sometimes they say, if you come here as a teacher and you stay more than 5 years, you're here, you know. I don't know why they say 5 years, but it must be math. Oh, by the way, I looked to see if I had any math poems, and I didn't. I'm going to try. I'm going to think about some math poems. But this one is called Flyover Country, and I think it might be okay to read to these very excited legislators, I'm sure, you know. The lady from the Arts Council said, just a couple of poems each of the chambers. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going into the lion's den and we'll see what happens. Yeah, yeah. This is called Flyover Country. Oh, and I was, the editor you may know is Rick Kempa, who came up with my book. He's the one who suggested that I do this book, and I have a story to tell about that. But I'm very glad that I waited so long because I'm very happy about the looks of this book. Dave Gutierrez, who teaches he's now working in the writing center because he just can't stay retired no matter what happens. But he's a graphic designer who did a very nice job on this book, which is available at the bookstore, by the way. Anyway, Flyover Country. On the flight between LA and Chicago, a pilot might point out some feature below, like the Grand Canyon or Devil's Tower. But he won't mention our place on the eastern slope of the Rockies. They call it flyover country, high deserts where rains rarely fall. Some might say, what's to look at anyway? Just miles and miles of sagebrush, prairie, small towns nestled in the Badlands. But this plain follows the Oregon Trail, a scar across the land, still visible from the air. As thousands of hopefuls walked the west, following wagons or pushing handcarts in search of something else. California, or the fertile valleys of Oregon. Some stopped along the way, claimed this place as their own. I once walked the Continental Divide on a short trek, watched contrails of planes crisscrossing the sky, saw a sago lily blooming alone on the trail. The only sound, the wind whistling tales of long ago, a creaking of immigrant wagons on South Pass, echoing in ruts cut shoulder deep. And let me find it. I found Rick Kempa asked me if I wanted to get a book together, and I thought, okay, great. I'll send him a box of my poems and he'll take it from there. I didn't. No, he sent them right back and said, now you get to put them into sections. And I thought, written over a period of 40 years, they don't relate to each other. You know, nope, you do it. And so I had to sit down in the cold, snowy spring and sort these poems out. And I, to my surprise, found that some of these related to one another. And I also found that I'd written a poem or two several times. That's what short memory loss does. But the sections now kind of make some sense, at least to me. And Dave Gutierrez, I found that several poems had this sago lily in it. And what the sago lily seemed to me to be is a wildflower that kind of blooms all by itself out there. It's not a whole group of them like daffodils might be or something. And he did this as a section divider. He made this, it looks almost like a woodcut. Okay, it's a quarter till, so maybe I should end. End on a note before I screw it up, huh? Yeah. But anyway, thank you guys.